Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse from Law Astrology, and in this recording I'm going to be talking about Mars retrograde. So Mars entered into the shadow zone on the 12th of May, so this was the pre-retrograde period. And Mars then went into Aquarius on the 16th of May, and then tomorrow on the 26th of June 2018 Mars will station retrograde at 9 degrees 13 of Aquarius. So Mars is our inner warrior. He is the part of us that wants what we want. He's our inner go-getter part of ourselves. He's our fight. He's our anger. He's how we conflict with other people. He's the way we argue. He's the way we fight for what we think is right or fight for what we want. He's our energy. He's our passion. And so when Mars stations retrograde, we tend to go through a period where sometimes we feel a bit frustrated because Mars likes to be doing something active. He wants to be on a mission, moving forwards, getting there wherever there is. And so when he's going backwards, we can naturally feel some frustration because it's like someone is slowing us down. But that is necessary. Because sometimes we're so busy doing stuff in life that we don't have time to really check in with ourselves, that whether what we are doing is getting the results that we want. Have we lost touch with why we're doing what we're doing? What's the motivation? And so the Mars retrograde period gives us the time that we need to check in with ourselves, to figure out if we are indeed going in the right direction, if we are really feeling aligned with those goals that we've set ourselves. The Sabian symbol of Mars stationing retrograde is a man who had for a time become the embodiment of a popular ideal is made to realize that as a person, he is not this ideal. So wrapped up within the initial part of this retrograde period is this questioning about ideals and whether the life that we are living or the part that we are playing is true to ourselves. Mars in Aquarius naturally is slightly cooler than some of the other signs. Like Mars is generally hot-headed, but Aquarius is very detached, Aquarius is cool, calm and collected normally. But Aquarius also does have an awkward side. And so one of the things that we may need to be aware of during this period is that occasionally we may find that we are maybe feeling rebellious, maybe feeling like slamming a few doors like a stampy foot teenager, and maybe just feeling frustrated that we're not getting our way. And this is because, as well as Mars being in Aquarius, which sort of holds those kind of feelings on a shadow side, Aquarius can be rebellious and sort of contrary. Mars is also going to square Uranus 3 times as well. So Mars square Uranus anyway tends to be very restless. With Uranus we want change. There's instability there, but there is this feeling that we want change and we want to do something that is unique to us and we want to be independent. It's fired up. It's really, really fired up. And the problem is that we may be restricted in what we can do during this time, because Mars is going retrograde and we're being asked to reflect upon those goals that we've set ourselves and the motivation that we've set ourselves. So this Uranus effect can be quite frustrating, but it's also possibly quite liberating as well. That sometimes it's actually liberating to acknowledge that you feel angry, or sometimes it's liberating to acknowledge that there's something that you want to fight for. So although this is a bit of a spiky aspect, it does have its benefits as well, because some kind of change is needed, and that's what Mars and Uranus are telling us. Some kind of change is needed, so that we can be more true to ourselves, so that we can set unique goals. With Mars moving through Aquarius, it's possible as well that we are looking at issues that are connected to our group, our tribe. Society is something that both Uranus and Aquarius are concerned with. How do we fit in? So maybe we are questioning our allegiances during this time. Maybe we're wondering who are our friends and who aren't. Maybe we're wanting to change our friend group or our social group in some way, or our network. Maybe we're wanting to sort of take action or take charge of that group, which is difficult. Again, Mars is going retrograde. Maybe we're just dealing with grumbles and conflicts in our social circle. Because sometimes, of course, when there are rumbling conflicts in friendship groups, we tend to let them rumble away because we don't want to rock the boat and we don't want to fall out with each other. But sometimes we have to address if there's problems, because we either need to reset the boundaries or just the dynamics within that friendship group. So sometimes that can happen when Mars is going retrograde. It's traditionally a period which is not conducive to starting some kind of conflict. If we kind of look back to sort of traditional old astrology, it is suggested that it's not a good time, for example, to decide that you want to get a divorce and activate that by going to the lawyer, or to initiate any kind of legal conflict, legal action, I should say. So just be aware of that during this period. But it is a time to look at how you are dealing with the dynamics around you and how you are dealing with the relationships around you. And maybe to try to reassess what is triggering you. Because we all have our buttons, and Mars is, he tends to react very quickly, Mars. So we need to be looking at where we're getting triggered as far as our friendship groups and our social connections and so on, including social media as well. I have noticed that there seems to have been some kind of flame wars online recently. As things have got somewhat heated online recently, as people air their views, remembering Aquarius as an air sign. What's interesting, though, is that there is a karmic story rumbling with all of this as well, because Mars is going to be also conjunct the South Node 3 times as well. So the South Node is all about what is draining us, where we've maybe got too comfortable. Positively speaking, we can take the best of all the South Node possibilities and put that to the service of the North Node. But there is a feeling that we need to let go of some old arguments, some old conflicts. One of the things that may challenge us, though, during this Mars retrograde period is that for some of us, we may feel, especially if this is happening in a particular sensitive point in your chart, say on your sun or your moon or one of your personal planets or one of your angles, you may feel sometimes like giving up. You know, or you may feel defeated in some way. You may feel that you've lost your motivation. And if you do feel that, the main thing is not to get lost in it, not to feel completely defeated by the fact that you're experiencing these kinds of feelings. It's all part of the process. Sometimes we have to consider loss and not getting what we want. And in fact, sometimes we don't get what we want in life. And how we respond to that says a lot about our character. You know, it can be tough when we don't get what we want, but how we respond to it is really going to dictate how the future unfolds. And that's part of the lesson as well with this South Node influence. The interesting thing is that Mars is also going to be creating a series of 3 sextiles to Chiron, the wounded healer. So even though there is instability, restlessness, frustration, and the occasional temptation to slam a few doors with Mars square to Uranus, even though sometimes we feel like we've had enough, we've got no energy, we can't do it anymore, there's no will, run out of gas, Mars conjunct the South Node, there is the potential for healing with Mars sextile to Chiron. We are actively, that's a key word for Mars, we are actively engaging our inner wounded healer. We are actively looking for ways to bridge the gap between ourselves and others. We are activating this magic key, this special possibility for finding a new strategy, finding a new way, finding a new direction, acting differently. Acting differently, I think, is also one of the keys. We've got to respond differently, because if we want something different, then we've got to do something different. And that's part of this story as well. Mars is going to be conjunct the lunar eclipse on the 27th of July. Just watch that date, note that date. Again, for those of you who are sensitive to this particular period of Mars retrograde, that includes myself because it's all happening on my descendant and also conjunct my moon. For those who are affected by this particular retrograde, the lunar eclipse on the 27th of July is likely to activate things. So just be aware of what is happening around this time. It's possible that there is some kind of revelation around this time about what this Mars retrograde period is all about for you. It's particularly important to watch if you feel as though you've been triggered, or if you feel as though someone is pressing your buttons, for example. Just take a breath, take a moment, so that you have time to really get to grips with what is going on. And being aware sometimes is all it takes, just to have that presence of mind, which again is an Aquarius thing, the presence of mind to take a step back and not take things quite so personally. Because Mars sometimes, he does tend to take things very, very personally. Mars is going to re-enter Capricorn on the 13th of August. So the vibration starts to change. We've been dealing with who are our allies, who are our friends, who are our enemies. Maybe we are getting heated or have been heated about political or humanitarian causes, issues, networks, how we are functioning together as a group. There's been issues perhaps there. But with Mars moving back into Capricorn, we're starting to look at what are we manifesting, what are we building, what are we constructive, how can we agree to disagree in a constructive way, how can we build together with Mars, how can we act in a cohesive way so that we can build something that is strong, that we can build these good foundations. How can we make a plan? This is really the time of strategizing when Mars goes into Capricorn. Even though he's still retrograde, this is time to start sketching out some plans perhaps, and really thinking in a constructive way about what it is you want to do next. Mars will station direct on the 27th of August. And he will station on the Sabian symbol a woman reading tea leaves. Such an interesting symbol, seeing as this takes place in the very realistic, kind of gritty reality sign of Capricorn. This woman reading tea leaves reminds us that we do need to use our intuition, and maybe what is being emphasized at this time is that it is important to act on our intuition, that is the reality, that our intuition is something that can help us to create the reality that we want to create. So it's very important to listen to what your intuition is telling you as far as the actions that you're going to take next as Mars finishes this retrograde period. Mars will re-enter Aquarius on the 11th of September, and then he will exit the shadow zone on the 8th of October. So basically, even though Mars will be moving forwards again after the 13th of August, it's really going to take right up until around that October, that first week of October, before we really start to feel as though this full retrograde has been understood and processed and acted upon, and we're past that point. So that's something to bear in mind, because if things aren't working as you want them to go during this retrograde period, remember, because Mars is going to be square to Uranus and conjunct the South Node and sextile to Chiron 3 times, you are going to get another chance each time to do a bit of course correction, or to try a new strategy, to do something different. So don't be afraid that if something you're trying to do during this period is not working, it's not a case of doing that Mars square to Uranus where you just want to throw your toys out of the pram, It's about sort of stepping back and going, okay, that didn't work. What else can I do? How can I change this? Or, of course, it is checking in with, do you want to do this in the first place? And that's all part of this as well. So remember that you are going to have other chances to do what it is you want to do, and not to feel as though you're being completely sidelined or defeated before you've even started with the South Node kind of influence. On my website, I have got an article. It's an article that I actually wrote quite a long time ago, but if you haven't read it, you might find it helpful. It's Mars retrograde through the houses, combats and strategies. So in that article, I talk about Mars retrograde through the houses and how sometimes it can manifest what you feel like you're fighting, and how to deal with that, and some of the best actions that you can take during that period. So that might be helpful for some of you if you are curious to get some extra information. I will put the link in the information box below. Also below, I will put a link to my Patreon if you fancy supporting me and getting some extra posts and extra recordings. I do various pieces over there on Patreon for my patrons. And also as well, if you fancy joining me on Facebook on the Laura Astrology page, I write updates on Monday to Friday. So I kind of create these sort of little inspirational pieces of writing based on the aspect of the day. So if you're interested, I will put the link there below. So I hope this recording has been helpful for you, and I wish you many blessings on your path.